The recording. Yeah, we
A
can
recording is started, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
We can
Some
continue.
internet issue.
Perfect. So then let's welcome everyone again to this user group, and thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me. I think I met Vinod on one of the SXA workshops that I'm doing at Sitecore and that I'm offering, which are a 2-day workshop. And I think currently the best option to get into Sitecore and especially SXA development. So if you are interested in starting SXA projects, just reach out to your nearest Sitecore contact and we can arrange a workshop either with me or any of my colleagues. So today I would like to show you or guide you a bit through what has been released with SXA 10. And I hope there's something interesting with you. If there's anything, well, we can have questions at the end. Until then, I think it makes sense to just go through the slides. And other than that, I think, yeah, we're good to start. So I got introduced already. My name is Sebastian. I'm solution architect at Sitecore, and yeah, you find me on Twitter quite active using the Twitter handle @Sitecore, which I chose even before I joined Sitecore, so it's not not connected to my change or job change. And there's some background noise. If you could mute yourself. That would be nice. Thanks. So yes, I'm into Sitecore development since 2014, and I've started working with SXA by the end of 2016. So that's quite after the first release of SXA, and I've followed all the releases so far and did the bigger implementation with a client, and now I'm supporting clients and partners that start with their SXA implementation or have dedicated questions to SXA implementations. So, well, we are remote. Usually, I think user groups are also also like real face-to-face meetups. But still, I would like to know what is your experience with SXA. So the easiest would be that you either just scan this QR code or go to the website menti.com and enter this code. And if you do so, we can see, yeah, what's your actual experience with SXA. So let me just share the other screen. It shows the results. So yeah, if you're going there and just choose one of the options, like if you're a starter and just curious about it, maybe choose the first option. And if you've played around with SXA already, that would be the second one. If you're doing your first projects or several projects, there are some options. And maybe you are even a pro and you don't know what you are really doing here because you know everything already. So, and if there's an option forgotten, you can still choose other. So let's give it a minute or two to see the overall experience here with SXA. So quite. I think we have a couple of more people than just 4. Yeah, 5. So I think it turns out that we have people that have utilized it already quite a lot, at least one, and a lot of people who are starting with it. So I will definitely explain a bit around the new features so that you also get the base idea of those features and then what is new about it and what's enhanced with the SXA release 10. So you can still continue this. I'm really curious what your experience is, and then let's just move on with the slides. And I also have some live demos within the presentation, and we can have a look at this chart later on. So if we take a look at the whole history of SXA, well, it started off in August 2016. So shortly after I joined in and became curious about it, there was at the time a video from a German agency called Netzkern that brought me into this topic. And from that moment, as I said, I followed with it. And there was always something great added on top of it, like facet support or grid frameworks or Creative Exchange Live to enhance the development and front-end process, and then presentation and content sharing, which seems to turn out like a very, very powerful tool, even in a non-multi-site implementation. And component cloning, which lets you create new components within minutes instead of hours, I would say. And then in SXA 1.8, Horizon was introduced, not an SXA feature, but SXA and Horizon were compatible by that time. And then JSS and SXA grow together. And especially with the last release, I would say another two really nice features have been introduced. On the one hand, the SXA CLI, so the command line interface for SXA to support the front-end development process, and then also a new scripting language called Scriven. So what about SXA 10 now? Well, if you take a look at the release notes, you will find only one highlight, which is the Docker support. And actually, also me was like a bit, yeah, I mean, it's great, and it's a big milestone of Sitecore. But in terms of SXA features, I was a little bit disappointed, I have to say. And I even got to know some rumors that said, well, is SXA dead, or like there's nothing happening anymore besides just following the general implementations of Sitecore as a core product. And well, that's definitely not the case. So I'm in constant contact with the product team, and we discuss things and optimize things and so on. And we also do this video series together. But one thing is pretty clear. I think SXA will be more coming to the core instead of really dying, I would say. So SXA and its great ideas that are following SXA will become more core, either in the later on released SaaS solution. Can you mute yourself, Saddam? Thanks. Of course, yeah. So, well, if you take a deeper look into the release notes, you will find out that it's not only this one highlight, but it's actually 23 new features and a lot of bug fixes, which, well, could lead to the assumption that SXA is quite buggy, which is not the case, I would say. So here and there, definitely there is a bug, and they get reported, and some of them appear in very special occasions. And we will also see one, by the way, one or two during this presentation, and I will tell you how to ship around with that. But yes, there are bugs, but there are also constantly fixes. And SXA has a zero tolerance for bugs. So they're fixing everything with high priority, and I think that's a very good way. If we take a deeper look on the features, well, we're not going through all the 23 new features today. But what caught my interest, I would say, yeah, Docker support as one of the highlights. But there are a couple of more. So with SXA 10, you have a language fallback on all out-of-the-box data sources, which I think is a good thing. Then SXA introduces a custom workflow action that helps you manage your workflows and have components and data sources of components in a dedicated workflow which has some some good ideas, I would say. Then A/B testing to be maintained on partial designs is now possible, and it will be then executed dedicated for this particular page. I think this is a huge improvement. And then there are 3 new Scriven functions introduced. And last but not least, a very huge improvement of the SXA command line interface. So what I would like to take a look into with you today is, again, not all of them, sorry for that, but we will take a look at the custom workflow action, the new Scriven features, and the SXA CLI improvements. And yeah, so let's get into that. So first of all, I would like to start with the SXA CLI enhancements. And I've seen in the voting or in the survey that some of you are, let's say, starters. So just to give a little introduction. So if all the front-end related assets in SXA are organized in themes, and the way to work with themes is that you have items representing your CSS and JavaScript assets and even fonts and images and stuff like that. So one of the, let's say, workflows could be that you just, as you can see here in this little animated GIF, is that you go to the item in the theme, download it, do your changes, and attach the new SCSS file or CSS file. So, well, to be honest, if we would really work like that, that would be me after 10 lines of coding. So, well, that's actually not the way how you really have to work. And in a very early version of SXA, as we've seen on this historical timeline, Creative Exchange Live was introduced very early. So Creative Exchange Live is a way to synchronize your changes into Sitecore, especially the changes on the front-end assets. And with doing Creative Exchange or Creative Exchange Live, you can see that the theme looks quite crowded. So, well, you can't read the folder structure here, but it says that we have, for example, Sass files or we have CSS files, and you can see that out of the box already there's a long list of Sass files and CSS files, and you will add your own ones and change existing ones and add maybe JavaScript files and all of that. So you all have that in your theme organized in Sitecore as items, which is quite a lot. And using Creative Exchange, you are able to export then your website as static HTML files. You can create some kind of agency drop as a zip file and hand it over to someone who doesn't even know Sitecore or has Sitecore installed. And then this front-end agency, for example, could work on the files doing the styling, and everything is then imported back into your Sitecore solution. So that's what you would get with Creative Exchange. And with Creative Exchange Live, just adding the live thing, you have some kind of live synchronization between your locally managed assets or like files like CSS, SCSS, and JavaScript files, and then synchronize it back into Sitecore using some gulp commands. But still, we face the issue of having all those files in here. And SXA received the feedback that, well, you have some kind of problem in here, I would say, because on the one hand, the front-end developers want to synchronize everything into their Git repository or into any other source repository. Well, on the other hand, you synchronize it to Sitecore, and there the items would be serialized back into the source repository of the backend developers. So you have basically two sources of truth, and that was a problem in the past, or at least that was feedback of the community. And that's why SXA introduced a way to basically choose if you really want all the source files in your Sitecore theme, so as items in Sitecore, or if you just have pre-optimized min files in organized in Sitecore, but then managing and working on the source files just locally and synchronizing it into the source repository, which I think is the preferred way. And all of the feedback I got so far within the projects is that this is really going into the right direction. So with this new CLI, so the command line interface, what you can do since SXA 9.3 is you can create a theme. You can, of course, manage the front-end work without stepping into Sitecore at all. And you do not have the unnecessary source files in Sitecore anymore. And you can manage the files within your source control as a single point of truth. And you only store the compiled assets in Sitecore, which are then needed in order to display your site in a proper way. So for that, well, the SXA CLI had the version 101 by that time, and it was introducing 4 different commands: the SXA new command to create a new theme, the SXA init command to reconfigure your theme in terms of how it should synchronize with SXA or with Sitecore and the items stored in Sitecore, and then an SXA register command that is responsible to register your Sitecore instance URL that is then used multiple times in the theme creation process. And just to be sure which URL is registered, there is also an SXA get URL command. So this will display whatever URL or instance URL you have registered so far. So yeah, that was the initial release, and it was, I think, already very, very helpful. And with SXA CLI version 10, there are a couple of more commands added. So still, of course, you can create a new theme, but a new command has been introduced, which is called SXA config. And SXA config is basically doing what SXA init was doing before, just with a proper naming. And therefore, the new command SXA init is doing something different. This one will help you to initialize your new theme and download all the files that are needed, for example, in terms of an SXA or CLI upgrade. I show you a URL later on. I've written a blog post about that, how to upgrade your CLI and your theme from SXA 9.3 to 10. So you will see at least this this link to my blog post, and I will show you in my demo how to create a new theme and what commands we have available. So the next one that got introduced is the SXA watch command, and this is replacing the old gulp task or gulp command that we had in order to synchronize with Creative Exchange Live all the changes from our front-end related assets into our Sitecore instance. So I would say those tasks are now just hidden behind the SXA watch command, but it's more consistent. And you can also provide a certain task name to only watch and synchronize certain folders of your theme, like only CSS files or only JavaScript files or whatever you would like to watch and synchronize. But you could also synchronize everything by just typing in all. So SXA register and get URL we've talked about already, but then especially for also for local development purposes, but also especially for CI/CD purposes, there's now an SXA build command, an SXA upload, and an SXA rebuild command. So the SXA build command, or let's say it differently, when you have worked already with the CLI in 9.3, in order to build everything, you would have to step into a file of a certain type, like a SCSS file, perform a change, save it, and then the gulp task recognizes that a file has been changed or has at least another change date, and then builds the new pre-optimized min files, and then you go through all the files to just perform a change in order to get everything synchronized, which can be quite exhausting. So SXA build is able to do all of that with a single command. So all of your pre-optimized min files, so your compiled and minified files are created with just one single command. And with the SXA upload command, you can upload all of the files you have into your Sitecore or SXA theme, also just with one command. And then SXA rebuild is just combining the first two. So it's performing first a build and then an upload. So in case you anyway want to do both, you can run the SXA rebuild command. So just following the general process of Creative Exchange Live nowadays is what you would do if you start developing a new website. You will create your theme using the CLI, and then use your own editing environment. Could be, for example, Visual Studio Code. So your own platform, your own operation system, and it's independent of that. And you run the SXA watch command in order to synchronize all your changes. And the fourth step would be actually working on the file. So do your changes, and SXA watch will then take care of all the changes and synchronize it back to Sitecore. So that's the, let's say, nowadays Creative Exchange Live process for front-end developers or developers as such when we deal with front-end related assets. So if we talk about a case for CI/CD pipelines, I would say I often get the question, so what should I really, or how should I include now my my theme into the CI/CD pipeline. And I think one way to do it is and what to be serialized, right? Should I serialize the whole theme? Should I serialize my pre-optimized min? Which is the right one, because multiple developers has worked on it. So how we discussed it as a best practice, and maybe we can discuss this also later and see if you have experience with that and have good options. But how we discussed it as a best practice is that we see the pre-optimized min files that are generated out of all the source files more as an equivalent to a DLL, which you would also not serialize or synchronize with your source repository. So what you would serialize then is you would definitely serialize the theme item as such. You would serialize the folder structure, the images and fonts that are not being compiled or anything, so they are just living there as items. But with the CI/CD pipeline within the build process, so whenever a build is triggered, for example, like when you check in your sources to master branch or something like that, then of course this build will create the DLLs, but there needs to be one step more that will run the SXA build command in order to build the pre-optimized min files and then upload it into your item package. So yeah, and then this package can go on the journey to production over your testing environments that you have on the way. So that's roughly what we foresee as a solution for CI/CD pipelines. And as you can see, it's especially supported by the new SXA build and new SXA upload or a rebuild command. So now let's have a look into the demo. So where's my Sitecore instance? Here we go. So I have here a Sitecore instance. It's Sitecore 10. And I have here a sandbox website, as you can see here, with a general structure that is provided by SXA. And now, well, if I take a look at how the pages look like, I'm currently just utilizing the out-of-the-box wireframe theme. So as you can see, it's looking pretty much like a wireframe. And I have just added some out-of-the-box components to assemble the page. Sorry, is that a question? Or was it just...
Sorry, Sebastian. Guys, could you please mute so that the session will be more fruitful?
Okay, thanks. So yes, so that's how my page looks at the moment using the wireframe theme. And as you can see, I have assembled already one of a page. And now I would go into Visual Studio Code. And what I've done so far is I've created a certain folder structure on my hard drive. So it always starts with a hyphen, and then the folder structure goes media, themes, and then the name of my tenant and the name of my site. That's not 100% necessary, but it gives you a certain structure how you could organize your themes. So within the sandbox folder, I will create now a new theme that I will then later on use with my website. So let's do that. I have installed the SXA CLI already, and let's just create a new theme using, first, I want to see what URL is registered. So I'm using the getURL command, and let's see. It's it's not the right instance. So let me just register the right instance URL, which I take from here. So SXA register, and then the URL name, and here we go. Just to double check if it's really the one now taken. Okay, so here's my correct instance URL. You will see now in the next step why this is important. So I will create now a new theme using the SXA new command and then providing a new theme name, which I will call just Zopune, for example. And hit enter, and let's see what happens. Usually this drives me through a kind of questionnaire. I'm not sure if you can read it, so let me zoom in a bit. So the first question, if I want to if I want to change the registered URL, so I would have the chance to change it here again, but as I've registered correctly, I will just say, no, I don't want to change that. So next I have to log in to Sitecore, and in my case, I'm an admin, so I'm just hitting enter or return and providing the very secret admin password and going further in the questionnaire. So now I have to provide the specific theme path, and this is where my theme should be stored under the theme folder in Sitecore as an item. So I will reuse the path of my tenant. So let's call it sandboxes, sandbox, and then yeah, that should be already good. So going further. And now it asks me if I want to set up the config file. So this config file is needed in order to store all the configurations that are needed in order to synchronize later on my my changes that I will do on the front-end related assets. So yes, definitely I want to have a config file. So now it offers me the chance to install certain theme modules to my theme. So those theme modules will include informations about or CSS and JavaScripts that are required for the certain features mentioned here. So if I'm going to use, for example, the search feature, then I can choose here the search site setup, or if I'm going to use the maps feature, I'm going to use the map site setup. So for this demo, I will just use everything and just hit enter, but it's described here how you could select or deselect the options that you see here. So just hitting enter, and now it will download the theme. And this is now a bit different as it was before. So before in Sitecore, you would create your theme either along with the site creation process, or you have a dedicated script that is creating the theme for you. And the theme creation in the past was by copying a theme that you had already with your SXA installation. So it was called the Basic 2 theme. Now this Basic 2 theme is still available in SXA, but it doesn't contain source files anymore. So, well, you still can create a theme using that way, but you can't change then the source files later on, which is, I think, more or less driving you to the way now using the CLI instead of any other way. Yeah, so in this case, as you saw, the theme was downloaded from a Sitecore repository, but it's also downloading basically the Basic 2 theme, but just not from our Sitecore instance, just from a central resource. And as you can see here already on the left side, the folders have been created and all the SAS files and source files, everything is here already. So now it's up for us to do the configuration of our theme. So again, it's asking me if I want to change the instance URL, because this will be the URL later on to synchronize to. So no, I don't want to change this. This is the correct URL. Oops, I'm not in my terminal. So, and now it's asking me if I want to transpile my ECMAScript 6 plus JavaScript files down to ECMAScript 2015 using Babel. Yes, I want that. And now comes the part that I showed you in one of the slides. So it's asking me now if I want to compile the JavaScript to minified files, and yes, I want to do that. But do I want to upload my JavaScript source files to Sitecore? And this is what I don't want, just to keep my theme in Sitecore clean and avoid this hassle of having two sources of truth and discussing that. So I want to keep my source files locally and check it into my source repository, but I do not want to upload them to Sitecore. So hitting no. Now I'm getting the same question for CSS. So do you want to compile your minified files? Yes, I want to do that. But do you want to upload them also to Sitecore? No, I don't want to do that. And I also don't want to upload the SAS files. So by having done that little questionnaire here, I have created my new theme, and I can basically navigate to that. So there's a folder created called Subpune after my theme name that I provided within the SXA new command. And now let's discover the first bug and how to ship around with that. So one thing that has been provided here is now I have to zoom out a bit just to see everything, is the server config.json. And this server config.json holds the information that it needs in order to synchronize the theme from my local to Sitecore. So it uses this path here along with this theme name. So I'm going to copy that for one reason, because I have to install my theme now to, using the npm, and and it will change whysoever this file, and I have to return the values that are provided now. So that's why I'm making a copy of that. And just to check in my Sitecore instance, so if you take a look into the media library where the themes are stored, you can see the basic 2 theme, but also I have here a folder called sandboxes. Sandbox, no, that's not the right one. I have several folders, obviously. That was not a good idea. Then hopefully this one, yes. So you can see the process has created the theme item for me already and a folder structure, but everything is empty so far. This is what we're going to change next. Going back to the CLI, we will do now, yes, we will hit the npm, no, come on, npm install or npmi, and this will install the theme now. Yeah, locally, and all the npm packages needed. This takes a couple of seconds, and maybe just to emphasize a few features that are a bit hidden in here, but the new CLI and the new process with SXA 10 and SXA CLI 10, well, it's also supporting now a higher version of Gulp. So this has been reported by the community that the old version of Gulp that was supported so far has some vulnerabilities. So this has been changed, and we're also supporting now a new version of Node and also npm. So yeah, that has been improved using the new CLI. If you go for the SXA CLI 10. Now waiting for the installation, and we are done. So our new theme is ready, and maybe you recognize that now this path here has completely changed. And if I would start now a synchronization process, it would place us into the wrong location and therefore will create a bit of a mess. So to fix or work around this bug, which is anyway in fixing currently with the product team, but just for that release, just copy back the server config that I copied earlier and save the file. So, but still I don't have synchronized anything. So what I will do now is I will use the SXA rebuild command in order to build everything and upload everything to Sitecore, at least my pre-optimized min files. So let's do that. And it will ask me for my Sitecore credentials. So I have to log in again to my Sitecore instance. And yeah, then it will do the magic. So yes, I'm Sitecore admin and have the password. So you get now this output of what has been done and uploaded. And I think the longest time will be now with the image upload. So in the meantime, we can already check what has happened to our theme. So you can see in styles, I have now pre-optimized min file. There are anyway no scripts. I think there are fonts, not sure about that. But now the images, we have a lot of, well, we have a few icons here, but we have a lot of flags for all the countries, and that takes a while just to synchronize everything. So just to make this theme now work, and this is nothing new, but just to have it properly working and show you also the effect of working with themes. So on the settings item of my site, I can say which themes are compatible with my site. Definitely the wireframe I choose from the beginning, but now I will also choose the theme I just created. And let me see in the meanwhile while this loads. Yeah, so the command is ready and everything has been uploaded. So themes, I think it was the last one. No, not this one, sandboxes. Just double clicking it to have it selected, save it. And so So nothing will change until now because I've just said that these are my compatible themes. But the last step I have to do is I have to say, tell my site that it's going to use now the new user group Pune theme. And that's I'm doing on the page designs item, which is located under presentation, and just choosing now the new option that I have. So Pune, save it, refresh my page, and you will see that I will get a different UI of my page, even though this is just the standard UI that you get out of the box to start with in SXA. And of course, it's up to you to make it the website your clients want to see. So not too much changes, I would say, but you can see the links are now red, or the navigation has changed, and it looks all a bit slightly different. And it's meant like a starting kit with a new theme. So if I want to make changes now, and let's say I have those promo teasers and they should have a red background, then I'm just going into the source files. No, not those source files, the SAS files. And before I perform the change, I will run my SXA watch command, and I will run it for all items to be watched or for all folders to be watched. And I will hit the -d parameter in order to get a little bit more output to see what's currently happening. So running it, it will ask me again to log in. And yes, password, all is started. And if I'm searching now for the promo SCSS, and I say, let's say here, I'm just adding a simple background, background color, red, save it. You can see that my uploading of source files was prevented because I have set my configuration to disable the source file upload, but the minification has been done. And let's see if this is also true. So doing a refresh of my page, yeah, not beautiful, but you can see the effect. And this would also be the process how to work, like not turning everything into red background, but yeah, doing your changes, refresh your page. It's all synchronized using the SXA watch command. And I think you have a quite good process in here using the new commands that you have available. Just looking a little bit on the clock, I think I have to speed up a bit, even though I think we have 1.5 hours. But I plan not to utilize all the time, to leave also some time for questions. So maybe just to share some great news, the SXA CLI 10 is completely compatible with SXA 9.3, so you can make use of those new commands. You can make use of the new jQuery version, NPM, and Node version. And how you change your 9.3 theme into an SXA CLI 10 theme is described in the link that you see here. So yeah, this way you can turn it easily even and utilize those new features of the CLI 10 even if you are still on 9.3. So I think this is really nice. And yeah, coming now to the next topic. So the next topic are the new Scriven features. If we again go back a little bit into history, until Sitecore version 9.2, there was a scripting language supported called nVelocity. And nVelocity was also represented in SXA 9.2, or sorry, in earlier versions of SXA, using a so-called template renderer in the rendering variants. Now, starting from 9.3, Sitecore has thrown out the scripting templating engines for nVelocity, and SXA was thinking about how to keep on this idea of using scripting languages. So they introduced the so-called scripting language. So it's not an invention by them. They just checked the market, what is out there, compared things, and came to the conclusion that Scriven is, even though quite unknown, I would say, but that this is the solution, or this is the way to go further with. And I think that was not a bad choice. So what they've checked in particular is, or they definitely took a look at the performance values of those of different scripting languages, and they compared a few, just a few mentioned here. And as you can see, Scriven is quite top ranked in terms of rendering time and rendering memory use. So it's really lightweight, but on the other hand, very powerful in terms of features. And I think that's especially on the rich feature set, that's where it won against Fluid, which is similar similar lightweight than Scriven. So yeah, the unknown one here, and as I said, I think it was a good choice. So with Scriben, you can create now rendering variants in SXA using just scripting languages and not using then any items anymore, where you assemble the whole markup using items. So I'm not going to share now everything about Scriven and what all you can do with it, but there have been 3 new functions introduced, which I find also quite useful. So the first one that you have is the SC_search function, which enables you to search based on a query within your Sitecore content tree. And you can basically create, for example, and display lists of certain things. You have automated teasering based on search and stuff like that. So it's really quite powerful. Another one that got introduced is the SC_inherits from, which could be some kind of or which could be utilized as some kind of switch. Like if you ask for if this template inherits from a certain other template, then this could be an activation mechanism of a certain feature, for example. And then last but not least, you have something similar, which is called SCGetItem. So this way you can basically get an item and all of its data from anywhere. So if you have the item ID, you can read that item and do operations on it, or display things on it, or ask for certain values in fields. Like if you have a settings item, for instance, you can ask for, like, get me the settings item and the value, I don't know, maybe a checkbox, and see if it's checked or not, and based on that, display the rendering in a certain way. So it's pretty well documented, as you have the link here. And let's take a deeper look into those functions. So the SC search function offers to search on a certain item context, or starting from a certain item context, which could be then the I item. So the I item is always the item that is currently represented by a certain component, for example, or it can be the page item. And the other thing that you would provide is then a kind of query. So in this example here, we even use an out-of-the-box query token that's introduced with SXA. So I search for pages under the current page. So this way I could teaser, for example, all my sub-pages just using search. And I can also add the max number of results, saying, like, I only want to see 5 numbers, or I want to skip even a few numbers. So that's very related. If you know the query renderer in the SXA rendering variants, then you might know these fields already. In here you see a little example, and I will show you these examples also in a live demo after the slides. So in here, what you can see is I'm just searching for items based on that query, and then I have an array of items which I'm just looping through and display them in a certain way. And I'm displaying, for example, then the item title and the item content field. But of course, you can do much more with it. I just want to show those this mechanism. And as an alternative, if there are no items found, so the array is basically empty, then you just display sorry, no items found, or whatever you like. So yeah, that's one of the possibilities. And if we take the SCInheritsFrom function, then you will see that you will check also the current item and then provide the item ID of the template that you want to check. So if your current item that you give here with your function is inheriting from a certain template where you give the GUID, or you can also provide the path to that template. And as you can see here in this little example, so if my current item, so the I item, inherits from a template mentioned here, then I want to display, yes, this item inherits from something, or I want to display, like, sorry, no. For example, just a simple example. So that's how you could utilize this new function, and I think it's quite useful. And last option that got introduced before we go into the demo is the SC get item, which is which basically gets you an item from wherever, as long as you know the path or the ID of the item. And so as an example, I have an found item. I call this a variable. So I'm using the function scGetItem and pass the ID of the item that I want to get along as a string. And then I can display anything from the item. So let me show you how that could work. So I'm going into, well, I have here a page called vegetables, and I have created in my tree, where is it? Under assortment, I have vegetables, and then I have corn and tomatoes. I hope both is vegetables, but I think so. So what I want to do is I want to tease the data of my corn page and of my tomato page. So I have here, well, the item name, and I have the content maintained here. So I want to create a rendering that is able to display, for example, my my subpages on the vegetable overview page. So I have created a page using cloning, which is called Zugpune. So I just cloned the page content component, which doesn't have its own data source. And if I drag and drop that to the page, well, it doesn't have a UI yet, so nothing will happen. So the first thing I'm going to do is now I will create the rendering variant for this Zugpune component. And usually to do so, you have now two ways. So in presentation rendering variants, you find more or less the markup of your renderings. And I have here the Zugpune rendering, which has two variants, the get item variant and the SC search variant. But as you can see, there are no sub items, so there's nothing really describing how this rendering is going to look like. So I will create now the UI using the example that I just showed you. So this code snippet of the SC search. And I could do that by just creating here a Scriven renderer and then place or copy over the script that I've created so that it's going to work. I'm not going to do it like that because that could be quite annoying, and I would end after 10 lines of coding with my head on the table. So that usually happens also using Creative Exchange Live. And you might have seen that I've created, beside the media folder, also a Scriven folder. So this Scriven folder contains then my rendering as a folder. So the folder maps to the name of my rendering and then shows those rendering variant definitions, which need to include a Scriven file. To make that all work, before I start actually my SXA watch command, I need to create such a metadata.json file, which I place into the Scriven folder. And this just has a configuration of the database, which is usually master, and then the item ID of my site. Because this way it synchronizes always with a certain rendering variant within the dedicated site. So let me create now the SC search Scriven variant. So I'm just calling it again SC search, but you can name it as you want to. The important thing is just called SC search.scriven, and it will throw me a certain exception because the item is empty. So let me just change that. Oh, that was actually a folder. So that was not the idea. Let me delete the folder. Delete to recycle bin, yes. And I want to create an SC search.scriven file. But again, I think this might throw an error because the file is empty. So if I paste now my script, as you can see here, this is what you saw earlier on the slide, and save it, then I think my SXA watch command stopped. So let me just start that again. Yes, here we are. Admin B, everything started, and I'm just saving this file again. So yeah, it says Scriven import was successful. So let me check my rendering variant on the SC search. Yes, you can see that this item has been created for me, and a front-end developer wouldn't even have to check that in Sitecore. And if I go to this item, you can see that the template field contains now the script that is representing the markup of this rendering. So if I go back to my to my vegetables page and I drag and drop this new rendering, then well, this is currently the wrong variant name. But if I switch it to SC search, you can see that the teasering starts off my underlying pages. And if I create now another page, this will directly be shown here. So let me just quickly show that. What other vegetables do we have? Maybe potatoes. Okay. Potatoes. And if I refresh this page, then that's not good. What's happening here? Potatoes don't show up. That's not good. Content, test, A, B, C, accept, save. That's interesting. So usually I would expect that this component shows now my my potatoes or my potato page. Maybe it's not yet indexed because SC search will take the data from the indexes. That could be one of the reasons, but I would have to dive deeper into that. Usually, as I said, it will show that instantly. Yeah, I'm not going to show with regards to timing. I would not show the other examples, but you've seen the whole process in creating a Scriven rendering variant and doing it on your local, synchronizing it with the SXA watch command. And yeah, that's basically it. Oops. Now not. So back to my slide deck. That was the demo. Now my more or less last, well, not really last one, but last thing that I wanted to show actually is the new workflow action. So the new workflow action, well, with workflows, you might see two problems. You can assign a workflow to a page and to your page templates because the page templates are copied towards your tenant and they are owned by you. But as long as you want to apply a workflow to any of the out-of-the-box components, you would have to change the template or at least the standard values of your templates, which is not recommended. It's not recommended because you basically would change something that is owned by SXA, and with the next upgrade, it will override your changes. So that's not a good idea. Another thing you might face is that your workbox, so if your authors are working with a workbox, this gets quite cluttered if they are all the items are within the same workflow. So you will not only see your page, but you will also see all the components. And on the other hand, what you will also recognize is that the authors will have to submit or bring all the sub-items or all the components related to the page into the same workflow state in order to publish everything together. So we have basically 2 or 3 problems along with workflows. And well, SXA thought of a good solution so that you can basically have a new workflow action that you assign to your current workflow. So let's assume I have assigned the sample workflow to my page template, and it has the draft state, the awaiting approval state, and the approved state, and then the action submit. And on awaiting approval, it would be approved or approve or reject, and then approved would be the action to publish it automatically. So what I'm doing is I've copied this workflow into a sample data source workflow. So this way I've separated things. And with this new workflow action, I can relate the command of my parallel workflow, which is the sample data source workflow, and refer here an action from that one. So this way I'm separating on the one hand the different workflows. So in the workbox I see, well, depending on what I want to see in the workbox, because I can select or filter it by workflows, I can only see, or I can limit it only to the pages, and all my components related or related to the page are are following the workflow in their own workflow, basically. So that's at least in theory. There's also good documentation about that. But when I tried that also in preparation of this document, of this presentation here, I sadly found out that, well, this feature has quite some bugs, and therefore I can't show it. And I think it's just fair sharing that it's not working, and it's now addressed and will be probably fixed with the version 10.1. So it's already in the backlog or ready for the next sprint to be fixed. We discussed a solution for it, and I'm pretty sure it will be ready by then. But once it's ready, I think it's a really nice and helpful feature. So watch out for this one. Sadly, not in this release, even though you could apply this workflow action already. Now, yeah, I've talked already around 1 hour. One last quick thing, because, well, this is not a new thing, but maybe, or I more and more get questions about, like, what about Horizon and SXA? So let me quickly go also through this topic, just a couple of minutes. Yes, they are compatible, and Horizon is released, even though it has a certain set of features. And what's definitely working, if you take a look at into Horizon, is you have your navigation for the pages. You can filter everything by site, and you can edit the fields of pages that you have assembled along with SXA. And you have a preview mode. You can switch between the data editing, something like content editor, and what you see is what you get editing, what you usually see in Experience Editor. You have a drag and drop experience of components, but only for components that do not have a data source. And it supports workflows, and it's yes, and you can access your page and partial designs and also edit it. But again, only with components that do not have an own data source. So that's already a lot, I think, what is provided along with Horizon, and SXA sites are completely supported in that manner. What is not yet supported is, well, designing pages with components that have own data sources, which is, I think, one of the most common cases, to have a dedicated data source. And one thing that is also not supported so far is rendering parameters, which is really necessary in order to work with rendering variants. So yeah, so I think assembling pages would still be a job for Experience Editor, but managing pages, like exchanging content, selecting images, and stuff like that, could be something good for Horizon. So let's also, no, not into have a demo again of the new Scriven functions, but have a demo of Horizon quickly for everyone who hasn't seen it so far, or has just seen it in on slides, like I did. So I installed Horizon. It's a separate application that you have to install. So you will not only have Sitecore in IIS, XConnect, and your identity server, but you will also now have Horizon installed as a dedicated website. There's a PowerShell provided along with it, where you have to change a few parameters, for example, your instance URL and things like that, but then it runs automatically. One thing I stumbled upon was I did not have the particular .NET Core version installed, which I think was 2.1.16. So I had all the versions around it, but not this particular one. So Horizon was not starting up. But there was really good help in the internet, so I was able to check it and find it out. So you can basically press this button or just start up the application with a dedicated URL. As you can see here, it's just having here the Horizon in the name, which I told it to have it. And then, yeah, as I said, you have you have all the pages here that you can navigate. You have from presentation, you will see the page and partial designs if you're not logged out. So let me go back in. Yeah, so you see also my changes apply to the assortment page that we've just done. So here's my page and partial designs that I could manage. And if I go here, for example, for the components, then you see the long list of components, which I think requires some kind of improvement to put it back into sections like the toolbox does it. But I think, yeah, here's also our Sitecore user group Pune rendering. So let me drag and drop it, and let me put it into the main. And I think it didn't work. Even though it doesn't have its own data source. No, it doesn't seem to work. Trying it here. No. So as I said, assembling pages with Horizon is still not really working. So, but managing the text here is definitely not an issue. So this could be used for authors, but I would say Horizon is quite in an early state. So beside managing your pages and what you see is what you get, you also have this content view of your pages, so you can have access like in the content editor and all the fields that are provided with a page template. If I go back to pages, you have preview options for different devices. You have your analytics directly on the page to see, okay, how does my assortment page perform? And you can go directly to preview and so on. So I think it's going quite in the right direction. And it offers a lot in one tool already. And I heard rumors that with 10.1, there will be much more of improvements also regarding interaction of SXA and Horizon, but nothing promised. I'm not in the product team, so I'm not the one actually doing things and prioritizing things. So yeah, just to have it seen and the current state, how those two go together. That's it. And that's also the end of my presentation. And I hope, yeah, you got something from it and it was valuable spent time. And I would like to ask you to just go back to your to this survey tool, and I would just go for the next survey to see what's your favorite improvement of SXA 10 of the ones you've seen, or maybe a few other things that you have worked along with. So yeah, if you just would like to share your opinion on that, I would be very happy. So if you just go back to where you opened menti.com, I think this slide should be shown. Or there's already a button on top stating that the slide has changed. So just give it 1 or 2 more minutes. Yay, bug fixes, definitely.
So this one we are singles multi-select informants.
Yes, we can definitely go directly to questions and things like that while this is being used. So yeah, if you have any questions on SXA 10 or any other SXA related questions, just let me know.
Okay. This you can unmute yourself and can directly ask the question if you need.
I can hardly understand you.
Am I audible?
Yes, but it's very cool.
Okay. I'll just reach. Unmute themselves if they have any questions for you.
Yeah.
Sebastian, like I have one question.
Yeah.
Like you see, now we have designed SXA site. Okay, like we have a one SXA site designed, and now we have a new requirement to design a SXA commerce site. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how I want your suggestion, like how to start with the commerce. We already installed storefront commerce site. So how do you say? What is your approach to that? That's what I want.
So you got me on the wrong foot, I think. So I'm not really a commerce guy. Okay. I mean, I know that SXA Commerce is based on top of SXA as such, and you find the same paradigms and the same ideas also in commerce, but you have different implementations of different components with storefront and things like that. So how I would start any of Sitecore implementation projects is if you follow, well, there is let me take for a while the documentation. Can I move this guy here? Yes, I can move it here. So if I go for the SXA best practice guide, and starting from version 9.3, for example, there is this project workflow. So I think what you usually get from your clients is an idea what are their goals with and KPIs of the websites or web shop that they are going to implement. And then on the other hand, the UX designers, either in your company or from the client side, directly start creating wireframes. UI designers will create the designs of the pages, and the requirements will get more concrete. So I imagine you are currently in this state where you get those requirements handed over. And usually your development project starts here in the analysis phase. So what I usually do is that I take a look on the different functionalities in screen designs and slice that into components and page and partial designs and compare it with what is already there and what needs to be customized, or how I can, are there renderings that I can reuse, and are there renderings that I can adjust or adjust easily that they follow my needs? And on the other hand, are there ways that I can create very easy custom renderings by just configuring and not really coding something? And the last option, of course, is as usual in Sitecore, you just code your own controller rendering, doing whatever magic you implement into it, which I always see as the last options if you go for SXA, because there is a lot in there already. So the other thing that you should do, again, not really comparing to commerce or not, is that you see what goes or what are reoccurring designs. So header and footer is usually a reoccurring design on all the pages. So you would put it in a partial design that you can reuse and just maintain once. But also some of the pages will be having reoccurring designs, just exchanging data. So in a commerce context, that could be a product page. So product page always has the same design. You have a product image and a product description, and maybe or multiple images of the product, of course a price and delivery options and things like that, and then a checkout button. So this structure you could predefine also in a partial design. You could leave some flexibility to the authors, just including another placeholder. But other than that, it would just pull the data from somewhere depending what your renderings on that page are doing. So that's always the first step I do when I get a implementation project, going into this gap analysis and into that phase to see how I slice everything and how I slice the requirements into breaks like partial page designs, and then also renderings and rendering variants. And I guess this is the same for commerce. So if you ask me for dedicated commerce renderings, there I have to say I simply don't know. I mean, I know a bit about commerce, but not that I could really guide you in here.
Okay. Okay, I'll go through this some.